But the reality is I'm not as familiar with the tax advantages of real estate in Australia versus the U.S. Real estate is a fantastic way to build wealth over time and pass on intergenerational wealth in the U.S. because it's tax advantaged. You can write off your mortgage interest rate. You can roll it into another property within 6 months if it's a commercial property without paying taxes. You can lever up 4 or 5 to 1. But and also, I would say from a consumption standpoint, if you're in a position at some point to buy a house, it has psychic benefits because it feels like nesting and it feels like you're committing to something and you can fix it up. So what I would suggest is, don't lever up to buy a lot of real estate in a market where traditionally the yield on that real estate, what you could rent it out for, is remarkably low. And my sense is you're in that period right now in Australia where just real estate relative to rent is so expensive that in some cases you just might be better off renting. Kind of do the math and then decide, well, maybe we'd be better off renting and putting our money into other assets. Because real estate, anytime someone tells you something always goes up, that usually means it's about to fall 30%. And, real estate came way down in the United States in 2008 through 2011. In some neighborhoods, it came down 50 or 60%. And if you were levered up, all your equity got wiped out. So I think it's situational. And, how much money do you have? Where are you in your life? Where are you planning to buy? But if it's I'm going to have to spend 50% of my pre-tax income on a mortgage and really lever up, and I'm buying at what feels like kind of a historical high in terms of the yield, you may want to think about speaking to some people who are smart and say, should I maybe rent and take some money and put it in other assets until maybe the market rationalizes or I have enough money that I can think of a house as consumption as opposed to an investment. But long term, there have been few ways that you can build kind of intergenerational wealth better than real estate, because it does usually over the medium and the long term go up. And unfortunately, in modern economies, the rich have weaponized housing codes. And I don't know if this is true in Australia, but in the U.S., the moment the incumbents own a home, they get very concerned with traffic and show up to the local review board and make it almost impossible to build new housing, which creates artificial scarcity, which drives up the value of the current homes and increases the wealth of the incumbents. And some of these government policies, which make it hard, which create, we need 1.5 more million housing units a year to satisfy household formation than we actually create. We have artificial scarcity in our elite colleges. It's great once you have a degree. It's great once you have a house. But all that does is make it harder for new entrants and benefits the incumbents. And I think that a lot of modern economies, their housing market gets weaponized. Australia, you have like one person for every 7 million miles. You guys have like, it's ridiculous that housing would be that expensive there. But the government has probably figured out a way to limit the scarcity because people the incumbents who own homes, who have a tendency to have a disproportionate voice in government, really like artificial scarcity. And we have become that in spades in the United States.